All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob?
Well, I haven't been fired from any of my jobs, at least this week yet. So I'm doing quite a bit better than a lot of the NFL coaches are.
You're right about that. You're right about that. I follow a guy on X slash Twitter, whatever you want to call it still, Kevin Gallagher. And he has been posting every day, like 2 days ago, Super Bowl 4 was 56 years ago, I think. And then we had on the 12th, Super Bowl 3 and Super Bowl 9 were that in that day in history. I think this week or today was the Bears Rams 85, well, now 86. The NFC Championship game was played 40 years ago today. So, I'm seeing a lot of the history, and it's really interesting that here we have these teams, these games that are all this week, and we just finished the wild card round today.
Right.
The difference, and of course, 40 years ago was 16 game schedule. 50 plus years ago was a 14 game schedule. So Super Bowls were happening a lot sooner. Now it's an 18-week schedule. Wild card weekend was just this past weekend. So we're still a long ways away from the Super Bowl. And it's an amazing, just the evolution of the game, how much it's changed.
You say evolution, I say de-evolving. Because it's such a watered down product. We talked before we went on the air. That the Steelers didn't look like they even belonged in the playoffs, and they weren't the only ones. The Packers, the Chargers, the Eagles earned their spot, but certainly didn't play like it. I expect when Goodell inevitably adds an 18th regular season game, we'll probably have 2 bye weeks, probably another playoff team. So, we might be talking, Super Bowl Sunday, a week before Easter Sunday, which will bleed right into the draft. There'll be, we talk like that there's no off season now. It's going to keep shrinking, folks, if Goodell gets his way.
Hey, look, we just had this past Thursday and Friday the Fiesta Bowl and the Peach Bowl, and except for I know Chick-fil-A sponsors a Peach Bowl. I have no idea who sponsors the Fiesta Bowl anymore,
and I don't care.
I think it's Verbo I don't know. Yeah, I think it was someone like that. But anyway, so college is spilling over this weekend too. So the national championship game isn't going to be played until next week. It's not going to be Thursday or Friday. It's going to be next week, next Monday, the 19th. And it used to be college football was over with by January 1st. That was the major bowl day. Your goal was to play on January 1st, the bowl game. And if you're really old like me, you can remember the days of NBC having the Orange Bowl and ABC having the Sugar Bowl both on at night. So you're flipping channels constantly between commercials so you can keep up with both games. It's amazing. And the league calendar and even the NCAA calendar is set up in the way of a 14-game schedule or 16-game schedule. And college football, it's set up like college football is over with January 1st with National Signing Day and these things. And I'm bringing all this up because I want to talk about the coaching vacancies before we get into Wild Card Weekend, because the complaints during the coaching cycle in college, and I'm looking at Lane Kiffin specifically, was that here's a guy who has left his program. his old program made it to the semifinals. And part of me thinks that if Kiffin had stayed there until and then was offered the LSU job after they finished, we might be talking about Ole Miss playing Indiana this weekend, this coming Monday for a national championship game. I know Miami was playing out of their mind. Mm-hmm. They did the right thing to play keep away from Ole Miss on offense, and there was very little that Ole Miss's defense could do to slow down Miami. I get that, but I'm just saying, losing that coach kind of took away a little bit from that team, because the rest of them are like, yeah, this is going to be our last shot, and who knows what, I might not even be at this program next year. I might hit the transfer portal. I'm out of here, kind of thing.
Right. And part of the many problems that is happening with the NCAA is, like you said, the college season, the cycle is still geared towards everything ending January 1st or thereabouts. So you still have to sign recruits. You still have to declare if you're a transfer, more often than not by a certain date. And in LSU's case, they had to hire a head coach. And I don't fault Lane Kiffin, for the job opportunity. Now, in the typical rusty dildo fashion, that Lane Kiffin is as a human trash human being, there's certainly different ways to go about it, other than the classless, cowardly way he did. But part of the reason why it went down the way it did was because of the college cycle, like you said. Now I don't know. I was rooting for Mississippi in the playoffs, or Mississippi was one of the teams I was rooting for in the playoffs, because I wanted to see them win it without Lane Kiffin. Just to rub his swarmy, spoiled brat little nose in it. But I mean, it is what it is. And like you said, Miami has been playing lights out. I expect that to be a hell of a game on Monday night between Miami and Indiana.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, and the whole reason why I bring all this up is because, so now we're in the pro coaching cycle. And yeah, I agree, Hemisphere. It was time for Tomlin to go, 19 years. But, and then Harbaugh, 18 years. But think about this time last year with New Orleans. We let Dennis Allen go in the middle of the season. The Saints were the last team to get a coach because we were interested in hiring Kellen Moore. We couldn't bring him in for a in-person interview until after the Super Bowl. So, you're looking at the Senior Bowl, the getting ready for the draft. You have free agency starting. Trades can start as of whenever the league year starts. I think it's March 1st or something like that. You can start trading. You can start getting ready for free agency. Well, if you're a team like, let's see, let me think of who fired everybody. Either Miami. No, not Miami. Who did fire? Oh, like the Falcons. They fire their GM. They fire their head coach. If I want to sign, say, or hire, say, Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator for the Rams, I have to wait till this season's over with,
right?
Before I can interview him. If I want to hire someone out of the pro personnel department of the Broncos, I got to wait till their season's over with to hire them. So, with the league calendar starting March 1st, that only gives me a very tiny window. And this is one of the issues that we had with Kellen Moore putting together a staff once we finally hired him. I mean, yes, he had his core group of people, Nussmeier, and of course, defensive coordinator, who I just drew a blank on his name. I can't believe it, but Staley, Brandon Staley. But, if you want to hire, say, something that some of the talk is that the 49ers defensive coordinator is going to be offered a job again because they think it's not Robert Saleh, it's the Jets that are screwed up.
Well,
which that's a fair accusation. But yeah, let's say the 49ers win this weekend. Now they go to the NFC Championship game. Now it's another week you can't hiring. There's 9 vacancies. It's like musical chairs, and that music just goes. And you got to make your decision because someone that you may have wanted to hire is going to sit down somewhere before you have a chance to interview everybody. And is that fair to a guy like Robert Saleh, Chris Shula? Those kind of guys. So that's the tricky part. It's almost like I want to say to all the NFL teams, you can't hire anybody until the entire league season is over with, and then push everything else back. Push the start of the league year back. Push the start of free agency back, trades back, the draft now in mid-May. I mean, is it really going to kill you? Because you got 6 weeks of dead time between the end of minicamp and the beginning of training camp. So how much is that really going to affect you? Just push it back a little bit and have fewer minicamps, fewer OTAs, just whatever it takes. But I just think they need to adjust the league calendar because it's going to be as bad as college football, where you're going to end up wanting to raid coaches with a wink, wink, nudge, nudge kind of deal behind the scenes while those coaches are still coaching for another team. And that's the whole reason why I even brought up the college bowl system and the college situation, because here in college, you just go and grab the guy. You start negotiations with him before their season's even over with, which you can't do in the NFL. So I don't know. It's just it's just one of those things that kind of bugs me. And it's just because of the way the league just keeps pushing it back. Super Bowl is now later and later, a month later from when these Super Bowls will play. This is Super Bowl. This is 65 toss power trap getting ready to happen right now. There it is. 65 toss power trap just happened. That's the play. But that's Super Bowl 4, in the background, New Orleans' first Super Bowl. Anyway, I'm missing some of the comments that are popping up here. Yes, I'm glad the Eagles lost. I was surprised that the 49ers were able to beat them because I thought that defense would just kind of like what New England did to the Chargers. I thought the injuries would just start adding up. I mean, that's what happened to the Chargers, basically. They weren't a bad team. They couldn't protect Justin Herbert. And once New England figured that out, they started just teeing off on the poor guy, Yeah, and I think the Seahawks are going to win this game. I think the Seahawks are going to be in the NFC Championship game. I just don't know to who. Bears, Packers. I think that was the late game that week, this weekend. Was that a surprise to you, what happened in that game, Bears, Packers?
Yeah, it was. Frankly, that was probably the biggest surprise outcome of the weekend. I was surprised at how close the Panthers played the Rams. I was surprised at how badly the Eagles played. But as far as overall outcome, Bears Packers were definitely, I expected the Packers to win because don't get me wrong, Ben Johnson and my coach of the year. I think he's done a wonderful job with them. I just didn't think that they had enough pieces in place yet to even win a playoff game. Because and this, Alan, young teams making their first playoff appearance in quite some time, typically don't fare well in their first appearance.
No.
And again, all the more reason why Ben Johnson deserves Coach of the Year. That group didn't get Yeah, they were unflappable. They remained poised. Yeah, even falling behind by what? Yeah, 3 scores.
Yeah, 21-3
Now,
was a halftime
yeah.
score.
Now the Packers literally handed it to them at every opportunity, but the Bears were poised and played well enough to take that opportunity. I think the Rams will knock them off this weekend, unless Chicago gets lousy weather because Stafford just doesn't play well in cold weather.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to the Rams, I was surprised at how much trouble the Rams had at handling the physicality of Carolina. So I definitely, although I think the Rams will win, I'm not brave enough to put any money down on it.
And hemisphere, you read my mind. It was 100% coaching issues. I did not know this until this past weekend, and somebody pointed it out in a meme. Matt LaFleur was on Shanahan's staff for the Falcons in the 28-3 comeback by the Patriots. So it was 100% coaching. I thought Matt LaFleur did a terrible job, horrible job coaching, calling plays in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
You're backed up inside your own 10, and you try a screen pass to a tackle-eligible player. I mean, you threw it to a tackle who's not used to running with the football, so of course he has it hanging out there. And you're playing a team that made its living off of comebacks by winning the turnover battle. I mean, I got to give it to the Packers defense. They did a lot. As undermanned as they were, they did a lot to keep the Packers offense in the game. Play calling was atrocious. I thought Jordan Love was a horrible quarterback in the second half. Mm-hmm. He looked like he had never seen a football before, the way he was throwing that ball. He refused to throw over the middle. He was throwing everything towards the sidelines. He melted down when the team needed him the most. And I thought both the coaching staff, offensive performance, and Jordan Love was just terrible. They let the Bears win that game. They handed them that game. They did everything in their power because you had so many opportunities to win that game and put this team away, because I guarantee if they got up to 28-3 or 35-3, 31-3, they're not coming back from that. There's just not enough time. There was not enough time. But you just called terrible plays, horrible execution, and you kept just giving them the ball back and giving them the ball back. You can't give it to them that many times and expect to come out of this. They scored, 23 points in the fourth quarter? Something ridiculous like that. You can't do that and win a game. You cannot. The Buffalo-Jacksonville game, I called it. As soon as it hit the 4-minute mark and Jacksonville took that lead, I said, Josh Allen's going to go Superman, and he's going to win this game with a 4-minute offense and score the touchdown, make them use up all their timeouts, score the touchdown, and win the game. It's just that's the way the Bills have played. Mm-hmm. And like you were talking about the Panthers-Rams game, I thought the Panthers played above their heads. They like a playoff team. The Steelers did not. The Chargers, to an extent, did not. And they had all this talk about seeding and everything else. I really thought, the Panthers really played well. I didn't expect them to win. I was not surprised that the Rams won. But the Rams, the fact they let the Panthers hang around concerns me.
Yes.
How do you see that?
Yes, because coming into the playoffs, I thought the Rams were the most complete team on the NFC side. It killed me, but the Rams were my end of the regular season NFC Super Bowl participant. And I still feel that way about talent, top to bottom. I think they are, they're more talented than the Bears. They're way more talented than the Sea Hags. And they're more talented than the beaten up 49ers. And McVay's an outstanding coach. I hate McVay,
Oh, I do too.
But he's an outstanding coach. You gotta give him props for that. So I still feel like the Rams are going to come out of the NFC, but I'm not nearly as confident as I was a week ago.
Yeah, I thought McVay would turn it on for the playoffs, and he really didn't. I think Stafford has watched his MVP candidacy kind of go up in smoke over this. I know they don't count the postseason, but it's carrying over from to the postseason. He just simply does not look like the dominant player he was earlier this season, where he was on a pace for a 5,000-yard season, 40-something touchdowns, all this stuff, and it's almost like it's Puka Nacua or it's nothing.
Yeah,
everything is towards Puka Nacua. I don't know what's going on with Adams. He doesn't look like the same receiver when he first got there. It's like he has some nagging, or he just got old all of a sudden. But yeah, the Rams and the defense just is not as good. It's almost like the Falcons exposed them. The defense is a great pass rush, but they're not very good against the run. And if you have a mobile quarterback, they're going to do something on you.
Yeah.
It's going to be an interesting matchup between the Bears and the Rams. I have a feeling if the Rams let the Bears hang around, they'll come back and get them just because that's the kind of team they are now. Dennis Allen runs that defense, and that defense does all the things the Saints defense did, except they get the turnovers. That's the big thing that's saving them right now. They get the key turnovers. Steelers, Texans. I tried to sit through that game. That was a disaster.
Yeah.
The only thing that was worth watching was the Texans defense. I thought C.J. Stroud looked terrible.
Yeah.
I thought that whole offense looks clueless. But the Steelers were just as incompetent, if not more so. Aaron Rodgers looked like he was 100 years old out there.
And I would say this to Steelers fans or people that would criticize Tomlin's playoff record. And I would counter with there's some accountability there by Mike for sure, but these last 6-7 Steeler teams that Mike Tomlin has taken to the playoffs, they weren't talented. You look at that roster, and I'm including this year, and I'll stay on this year. Aaron Rodgers, one of the most overrated quarterbacks in NFL history, but certainly at the tail end of his career.
Do you think it's his last game? You think this was his last game?
Yeah, I do. But we won't know about it for months and months and months.
Oh no, I know.
Because he's going. Aaron wants to drag this on as long as possible, so that way people talk about Aaron. I think if Mike Tomlin was back in Pittsburgh, I was starting to get the feeling that Aaron might be back too. But with that mini bombshell today, I think that clinched it. I can't see anybody else taking Aaron Rodgers. And putting certainly not a new young head coach. He ain't going to want that drama in that locker room. We talked about it with Kellen Moore when he got hired in New Orleans last year before the draft. Is Kellen going to just sign Aaron Rodgers? Absolutely not. No young coach in their right mind, no first time or first year head coach in their right mind would invite that soap opera into their locker room. So, since Mike Tomlin's not a coach, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be a quarterback. But like I said, it's going to be many months before that's going to be made official. The Steelers just weren't. The Texans' offense is not good, like you pointed out. But that defense is for real, and that's what won Houston the game. I mean, hell, Pittsburgh had 3 turnovers from Stroud, couldn't do anything with it because their offense was. Looked like JV players against a state champion varsity squad. But that just goes back to what I said. Steelers just don't have playoff caliber talent all over that roster. They're Pittsburgh's edge rushers. I love. That's about it.
Well, and the thing with the Steelers, just like the Saints towards the end with Dennis Allen and stuff, they just don't have that killer instinct. They don't have that drive to be a great team. They win a lot of times with just fluke stuff, mistakes. I mean, Harbaugh goes and resigns, or is fired, I should say, the day after his kicker misses that kick. Now, if his kicker makes that kick, does Tomlin resign the next day after the end of the Steelers season? Possibly, probably. And if Harbaugh and the Ravens got eliminated by the Texans that night, last Monday night, does Harbaugh get fired? I mean, both those coaches seem like, Harbaugh was there for 18 years. Tomlin was there for 19 years. Both of those guys look played out. And I agree, Hemisphere. I think Rodgers is done. His body language looked like it. But that's right now. I don't know if he's going to be satisfied that his career ended on a pick six, his last NFL throw. But I think he's finally given up the ghost that he was able to catch Drew Brees and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady for some of these records. He just isn't going to do it. And the only teams I could possibly see looking at Aaron Rodgers seriously as a potential starter would be the Indianapolis Colts and Minnesota Vikings. Those are the only two teams I could see that happening. And the Vikings only because J.J. McCarthy gets injured or something like that happens. And Kevin O'Connell is playing for his job. That's the only way I can see Aaron Rodgers being brought into that situation. But I'll be honest with you, I thought Phillip Rivers looked more capable at the end of his time in Indy this past season, coming back at 44, than Rodgers looked those last few weeks in Pittsburgh. I just didn't see
I agree.
A quality looking quarterback anymore. I just saw a guy whose skills have atrophied that much. So now that Tomlin is gone, do you think, and this was something I want to talk about the Eagles too, but because a lot of people felt that the Eagles need to fire their coach, they definitely need to fire their offensive coordinator, because it feels like all the problems seem to have happened when Kellen Moore left the building and came to the Saints on this offense. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the Eagles instead of Tomlin right this second. But the Eagles aren't going to fire Sirianni.
No.
Not a year after he won the Super Bowl. But they are probably going to fire their offensive coordinator. But are the problems on this team a lot deeper than just the offensive coordinator?
Yeah, but a lot of it is the divas, the AJ Browns, on the field.
The Saints fans who want to bring him here?
Ridiculous. I know. No, just no, and it ain't going to happen anyway. For those of you that do want it.
No, and there's nothing he offers that you can't get out of the draft.
Right.
I mean, did you watch that kid Surratt over there in Philadelphia, in Indiana? Watch Surratt in the national championship game. I mean, my son goes to bed every night with a picture of Surratt next to his bed. That's how much he wants him as a draft pick for the Saints. Not in the first round, but he wants him in the second. That's for sure.
I love him. I love both of Mississippi's receivers. This receiver class. If you pass on, Jordan Tyson or Carnell Tate in the first round, then and I think the Saints probably will, because there are a ton of quality receivers that are going to come off the board, starting probably in the late first round. This is when you'll start to see the run, but you'll see it through rounds 2 and rounds 3. And remember, folks, this is also where the Saints got Michael Thomas, so you could certainly get high quality, immediate contributing wideouts, in that range of the draft. So no, I mean, AJ Brown not coming here. But
I don't want to give up the draft picks. I don't want any of that.
Hell no. But I mean, as far as the Eagles' problems goes. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, a good to very good quarterback. But as we talked about with the Saints quarterback issues last offseason, Jalen is only great when everything around him is great.
Yeah.
And we saw, and he is. But when you have underperforming divas, a beaten up offensive line, and an offensive coordinator that doesn't know how to use your quarterback's best attributes, or any of your offensive star power's best attributes for that matter, you get what you saw out of the Philadelphia Eagles down the stretch, and certainly over the weekend against the 49ers. So I think Sirianni's a better coach than certainly what Philly fans give him credit for. But he needs to have good coordinators around him. And it wasn't just Kellen, because remember, folks, Kellen Moore was just there for 1 year. 2 years prior to that, the Eagles if they weren't Goodelled in the Super Bowl, they would have beaten the Chiefs. And then what happened the year after that? Philly folded down the stretch. Mailed it in during a playoff loss. Clean house of coordinators. Brought in Kellen Moore. Brought in Vic Fangio. You make your run to the Super Bowl. And then we saw what happened this year. Someone will probably make a run for AJ Brown, because I think he's played his way out of Philly. But again, that's a perfect example of, it's not just the coaching matters. But it's not just the coaches that spelled doom for the Eagles.
Yeah, and my thing is, Kellen Moore has had his issues calling plays here with the Saints. So it's not, to me, it's also the players that you've got on that team, the types of players you have on that team, and the lack of leadership and lack of accountability. The unimaginative play calling does play into it, but at the same time, you need new players in there. You need to replace an AJ Brown. You need to diversify that offense. You need to change some of the things about this offense, and they just haven't done it. And I think that's being reflective in the Eagles' performance during the season and in the postseason. So they're safe, but Tomlin and Harbaugh are probably the two biggest names, with Stefanski behind them. What kind of names are you hearing already for the Steelers job? Because the Steelers don't fire their coaches. They just ask them to resign, or they resign on their own. I mean, the last coach they fired got fired before Joe Namath won the Super Bowl. That's how long ago that was. Yeah. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and now Mike Tomlin have all resigned for various reasons. But who do you see moving into the Steelers spot?
I tell you what, my dream scenario is John Harbaugh getting hired by the Steelers and Mike Tomlin getting hired by the Ravens.
Just make that rivalry so much more interesting.
It would, man. But even though this isn't Art Rooney Sr., and Dan Rooney running the Steelers anymore, there's still the Rooney family. And they have a certain way that they like to do things. One of the ways that they like to do things is they like to hire younger guys.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see any retreads there. You're not going to see even younger retreads like a Stefanski or a Mike McDaniel. Brian Flores is going to be a hot name. I don't see him going that direction because he was a Tomlin assistant for a short period of time. They're just they're gonna hit the reset. I'm not gonna say clean house, but they basically are. They're gonna hit the reset button. Freeman from Notre Dame, and you mentioned this before we went on the air.
That's the name I keep hearing.
The two one I expect it to be one of these two names, either Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, but Chris is going to get a lot of attention for two reasons. Obviously, there were three reasons. Number one, he's a tremendous defensive coordinator. Two, the lineage, the Shula name, even though Don Shula's other kids didn't pan out very well as coaches. And three, and this is why I expect him to be a hot name for the Steelers. Chris is only 39 years old. You look, Chuck Noll coached 23 years. Bill Cowher, 15 or 16. Mike Tomlin, 19. That's what the Steelers want. Like you said, they don't fire coaches. Now, be careful, Steelers fans who have wanted Mike Tomlin gone for the last decade and a half, because there are not too many situations where you get to go from a Chuck Noll to a Bill Cowher to a Mike Tomlin. Sometimes you go from a Jimmy Johnson to a Barry Switzer, and then a load of names who most of them didn't deserve to even have an assistant's job in the NFL. But yeah, Chris Shula is one, and the other kind of under the radar outside of the Pittsburgh area. But he's going to get some love in this coaching cycle too. Other than the Steelers, is Antoine Randall.
That would be interesting.
It would. Former Steeler, current Detroit Lions offensive assistant. So again, a younger guy, and I think Antoine's in his mid 40s now. But still young as far as a coach goes. It comes from that Dan Campbell, coaching tree, which is expanding rather rapidly, isn't it?
It is. It is.
So he comes in. He's going to have immediate love of a lot of the Steeler fans because of what Randall did as a player. But Randall has already earned some chops as a coach, albeit a positional assistant. But again, Chuck Noll was an offensive line coach. Bill Cowher was a special teams coach. Hell, John Harbaugh was a special teams coach too. Mike Tomlin, a defensive backs coach. Now, Cowher was a defensive coordinator just before coming to Pittsburgh, but only for a year or two. Same with Tomlin, was a defensive coordinator, but only for a year or two. Under Tony Dungy, who ran that defense. So, Antoine Randall is going to get some love from the Steelers, and I would not be surprised if he ended up being the guy.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman, I just looked him up. He just turned 40. He turned 40 Saturday.
And he's a great coach, but I don't think he makes a move to the NFL yet.
I would be shocked if he does, but that doesn't mean that the Steelers aren't going to try and interview him. He just signed an extension. There would be a buyout situation, all that other kind of stuff too. So, but the Steelers probably is the most attractive job to me out there because based on the history of the Rooneys, that they are a very patient organization. They give you time to rebuild. Cowher did have 6 and 10 seasons as the coach, and he was never on the hot seat because that's not how the Rooneys are. Your coach is not on a hot seat. Your coach is given credit for the things that he has done in that locker room, and their attitude is, no, we're going to ride out with you until you think it's time. It's time, really. So a guy like Marcus Freeman who maybe if he goes to an organization like the Jets or someone like, the Browns or someone like that, probably doesn't get that kind of leeway to come into and build a team the way he wants to build it. The Steelers would. So that's what gives them the attraction that a lot of organizations that are looking for head coaches will not have. It's interesting. The one guy who really needed to be fired is the only guy who's left in the AFC North.
I know.
The Bengals coach. But the Browns, Ravens, and Steelers are all looking for head coaches. Unfortunately, the other name I keep hearing coming up over and over again is John Harbaugh going to the Falcons. Matt Ryan is doing, I think, next week will be his last week with CBS, doing the AFC Championship game, pregame. But he is kind of taken over as president of football operations to hire a GM. And that GM is supposed to hire a new coach. But some of the rumors are that, they might hire Jim Harbaugh to be both GM and head coach. I've heard different things. Where have you heard Jim Harbaugh's name kind of linked?
As soon as Harbaugh got fired, I expected Miami to fire McDaniel, and the two moves. Yeah, and the two moves happened less than 24 hours apart. I think Atlanta and Miami are probably neck and neck for Harbaugh, but look for Tennessee to make a run too. Tennessee has I think Cam Moore's going to be a very good quarterback. They don't have very much talent outside of that. But John Harbaugh has proven to be a talent builder, because when he took over for Brian Billick, the Steelers get all the love for coaching longevity and patience, as they should. But Baltimore, they had Billick for such a long stretch, and then Harbaugh for such a long stretch. Bisciotti. Bisciotti has shown. Bisciotti hasn't been the owner the whole time, but he has shown patience. I think Harbaugh ends up in Atlanta or Miami, but I'm not ruling Tennessee out either. I could see Tennessee being a stop for Stefanski. Tennessee or the Giants, because I think Stefanski's an underrated coach. He probably would have been the best name hire before Harbaugh and Tomlin hit. Kevin Stefanski and his agents got to be cursing out Harbaugh and Tomlin right now, because Kevin Stefanski just lost probably a couple $1 million within the last week with these two names hitting the market.
Absolutely. Hey, and for you guys that are seeing that game in the background, this is the infamous halftime show reenactment of the Battle of New Orleans in Super Bowl IV. And someone's part of their hand got blown off during the halftime show because a cannon misfired while it was being loaded, and the splinters took a guy's fingers off and stuff. So that you don't really see it, but you do see it. It's a bizarre halftime show. It's a long halftime show too. I've watched this game. They have Doc Severson and Al Hurt do this thing where it's a history of New Orleans via floats, Mardi Gras floats, and the Southern Marching Band is in there marching, playing the music too. And the last thing they do is this reenactment of the Battle of New Orleans. And there's a Southern Marching Band marching while they got these guys that are supposed to be dead on the field. And, oh, by the way, it rained that morning. So the field is already wet and soggy with, sinkholes in it and stuff. So now we have cannons and floats. This is one of the floats you're seeing right here, all rolling through this thing. The field is terrible. It is completely torn up by the time the second half of this game starts. It's a fascinating game to watch. It really is. I'm I watched this thing with and this is New Orleans' first Super Bowl. My dad was there. I got to tell John what John Butler is. I wasn't there. I was a little too young, but my dad was there. So it's New Orleans' first Super Bowl in Tulane Stadium. I'm sorry. I'm listening to you talk, but as I'm looking back on going, that's the Battle of New Orleans sequence going on. So it is a incredibly long halftime show and a bizarre halftime show, but I highly recommend watching. I mean, this becomes this jazz thing with the xylophone. They have a jazz ensemble out there because that's part of the history of New Orleans too. The jazz quartet. It's insane. But the guy who did all this, what was his first name? It was something Walker. He used to work for Disney World in Disneyland, doing the shows, the parades at Disney World and Disneyland. And that's what I think his name is Bob Walker, but I'm probably wrong. I'm probably confusing him with the oldies guy on AM radio in New Orleans. But anyway, that's who put this show together. And he used to do all these kind of shows for the Saints back then in Tulane Stadium for the halftime shows, which were more entertaining than those games themselves. Wow. Okay, so Hemisphere has thrown out two names. He said that the Jets, he's hearing that one Saints podcast says the Saints might be getting the Jets special teams coach. Saints could sign the Steelers special teams coach. Right now, speaking of Disney World, Daffy Duck or Donald Duck would be an upgrade to the special teams coach that we have right now. Just because the special teams was so bad this past year for the Saints.
Yeah, it was. And you and I have been talking about, that being probably the most significant staff move that Kellen Moore makes this offseason. But if I'm not mistaken, unless I missed something today, I was out of the loop all day today. The Saints have not made a move staff. Okay, I didn't think so.
No, the only thing they've done, they signed that CFL receiver,
right?
A big 6'5" kid, and I think he was a first-round draft pick in the CFL draft.
First overall pick.
So that'll be an interesting move. The Saints have gone to the CFL for players before. Eugene Goodlow was, if you're old like me, Eugene Goodlow was a receiver the Saints got from the CFL.
My guy, Clark, Delvin Breaux.
Yeah, Delvin Breaux. Bruce Clark was originally a first-round pick by the Packers.
I was going to ask you about that. He didn't want to play for them, so he went and played in Canada. He went to the
CFL, and the Saints traded their first-round pick in '83 for the rights to Bruce Clark, and he came to the Saints. And it's amazing, isn't it?
That's not the year you want to trade a first-round pick.
Exactly. I mean, you have an aging Ken Stabler in '82. Having that first-round pick in '83 would have been so nice to pick one of those quarterbacks that are coming through that draft, and they just didn't do it. Well, hell, I was screaming in '84 for them to try and sign Warren Moon out of the CFL.
Yeah.
And they went and traded a first-round pick for Richard Todd. So who knows what they would have picked if they had the first-round pick? You
could have signed Warren Moon. Yeah. You could have signed not signed. You could have drafted Boomer Esiason in '84. In '83, you wouldn't have had a chance for Elway, but you would have had a chance for Kelly. You would have had a chance for Marino. Eason went to a couple Pro Bowls, took a team to a Super Bowl. Yeah. Kenny O'Brien, went to a couple Pro Bowls. Took the Jets to the playoffs a few times. Yeah. But no, you like you said, you had to go with Richard Todd.
Yeah. Richard Todd, who in '82 threw 5 interceptions in the AFC Championship game. Now, granted, it's the Mud Bowl, so, the Mud Bowl, too. Everybody's jersey was so dirty, you might not have been able to tell who was who, but still, you threw 5 interceptions, and Bum said, I need that guy, quarterback in my team. Oh, my God. That's where I started my theory that the Saints go after guys who kick their ass.
Mm-hmm.
And in '83, Richard Todd beat the Saints in a Monday night game versus the Jets. And for some reason, the Saints liked what they saw in that game, and that's they figured who they're going to go with. And Richard Todd was the starting quarterback in '84 when the Saints won their first Monday night game against the Steelers. He wasn't any good, but he still was the starting quarterback. So they didn't win because of him. They won in spite of him.
Well, listen, it saved money for your scouting department. You don't have to hire scouts. We'll just sign or trade for people that kicked our ass the year before.
You think about it, you can go down the list, okay? All right, Michael Haynes kicked our ass in the 1991 playoff game versus the Falcons, so we signed him. Eric Allen picked off Bobby Hebert in the NFC playoff game versus the Eagles. We signed him.
Jim Everett.
Brad Muster kicked our ass in the 1990 playoff game. We signed him. You know, it's just that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, so it just, if you want to see who the who the Saints are going to target free agency, look for the guy who gave them the most shit, most trouble, and that's the guy they're going to go for. You know, it was maddening how they did that. But Calvin, I think I know who this guy is. This receiver. But yeah, he did. I think he was only a sophomore too. I don't think he was a junior yet. I think that was also the reason why he didn't come out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there are a lot of good receivers in college football. There's no reason to go after an AJ Brown. He's gonna be 30. He's 28 or 29 right now. He's got a diva complex.
A diva contract.
A diva contract. I'd rather spend the money on offensive linemen personally. If I'm gonna I need my draft picks. I don't want to trade any draft picks because you just dealt with that snake oil salesman over there in Philadelphia, who's going to steal your wallet as well as take money from you. I'm not dealing with the Eagles, Howie Roseman. I'm not going to deal with that guy. He's going to rob me blind. I'll let some other team deal with him or make him cutting, you know. Then you might want to look at him. But I don't think they need him. I think they need to go ahead, spend the money on interior offensive linemen and draft your skill players. Draft Jeremiah Love at 8. Draft a receiver like Surratt at, you know, what are they picking at? 37, 36 in the second round, something like that. Don't try and get the name player to win your team. It's just not. You don't need that. So you mentioned him earlier. Mike McDaniel got fired, and Harbaugh seems to be the guy that a lot of teams have him either going to Atlanta or Miami. I hope he goes to Miami. But do you have any other names that Miami might go for?
I have no doubt they'll at least talk to Tomlin. Stefanski would be another good hire there, especially if you still think you have something in Tua. Because Stefanski's an offensive guy. I see Miami if they don't get the big score with Harbaugh though. I see Miami trying to get. Well, tell me how good a PR move hiring Chris Shula would be in Miami.
Yeah.
That would be a good one. I can't see, and Marcus Freeman is going to get a lot of pub, but I can't see any noteworthy college head coaches getting look-sees. So I can see
because Indiana's head coach. He comes from the. They talk about this too. How many Saban's assistants were in the college playoffs? He comes from the Saban coaching tree. God, he's got Saban's mannerisms down pat. He looked pissed off the entire game. You're rolling poor Oregon, and you look pissed. like somebody screwed up, and all you're doing is staring that person down that screwed up. A team like Cleveland trying to make a splash, getting a coach from, and this is what I keep talking about when we talk about Mendoza, and they talk about Indiana and what they've done as a team and what they've done as a program. Here they are, a franchise, or I'm sorry, a school that's really a basketball school.
Mm-hmm.
And because you look at all these records they're breaking for the first, the most ranked teams they've ever beaten in their school history. The first major bowls they've been in since the 40s and things like that. You're looking at a team like this and you're thinking this guy can probably build a culture in the NFL. Do you think he gets any looks? I can't remember how to pronounce this man's name. It's Carl
Cignetti.
Okay.
There are going to be teams that are going to want to talk to him for sure. Probably topping that list would be Cleveland. He's a Pittsburgh guy, so he makes some sense for the Steelers on paper. I don't think Cignetti wants to go anywhere. Certainly not right now. Now, his offensive coordinator, Mike Shanahan, different story.
Mm-hmm.
A younger guy, really popular name right now. But I can't see a jump from collegiate offensive coordinator to NFL head coach. He might get some interviews. A couple of the teams that we aren't. You mentioned Cleveland, but we barely mentioned the Giants. We haven't mentioned the Raiders at all. The reason is they aren't attractive destinations for coaches.
No.
A young coach, your career might die there.
Mm-hmm.
An old coach, you don't want to end your career on that note.
No.
So it's going to be really hard for them. Cleveland, unless you think Shedeur Sanders is your quarterback, you have a quarterback problem in Cleveland. And outside of Mendoza, I'm not a big fan of the Oregon quarterback Dante Moore yet. If he comes out, I think he's too early, but he'll be overdrafted. And if Cleveland, if you're the team that overdrafts him, you might be whining and crying and reaching for a quarterback again in 2 years. So just like we talked about with the Saints last year, and one of the things that didn't make them a desirable hire possibly would be you have a quarterback problem. You don't have one, and you're not really in a position to get one. Now you think you have one in Tyler Shock, that you got in the second round. But where's your quarterback in Vegas? Well, at least you have an answer there because you're likely going to draft Fernando Mendoza.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland. What other quarter other than the Oregon kid, if he declares? And I don't even know if he's declared yet or not.
No one's declared yet.
Okay. What other quarterback answer do you have?
The Ole Miss quarterback was denied. Now he's going to appeal, but he's denied his sixth season as a college quarterback. So he may be forced to go into the draft. And where he goes in the draft could depend a lot too, because a team like Cleveland or a team like Miami, if they don't believe in Tua anymore, could go for a guy like that, but that's a huge risk, because honestly, that kid has really stepped up in the postseason. He is a winner. Now he's going to make some mistakes, and you're going to be patient with him. You got to build a lot of pieces around him, but that is a guy you could maybe take a flyer on if he's a second round pick. I don't know. It depends on how this draft shakes out. I know certainly the Rams are going to be looking at a quarterback just to replace Stafford. Even if Stafford lasts another season or 2 seasons, you still need to get a guy in place behind him and groom him ready to play, which I think that was their plan with Tyler Shough. I think the Rams 100% was going after Tyler Shuck to groom him to play behind Stafford, and thank God we got him, not the Rams.
Well, and here's another name, Brandon Staley. I expect Brandon Staley to get at least a couple interviews. He may not get hired. And again, if you're Staley and you want to be a head coach again, you're probably cursing out Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh this week because Harbaugh. I don't remember whether you said it on the air or whether you said it to me before we went on the air. It wouldn't surprise me that you said you kind of expect Tomlin to take a year off in the booth.
I think he takes a year off like Sean Payton.
Yeah, I kind of feel that way too. But he's going to get a lot of attention.
Oh, absolutely.
John Harbaugh, I think, coaches again immediately. Stefanski gets a job immediately. If you're Brandon Staley and Vegas comes calling, do you take that call or do you stay in New Orleans and build your resume a little bit more? Yeah. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But what about if you're Tennessee? You have Cam Ward. What about if you're Miami and you like Tua? What about the Giants? You have Jackson Dart. Again, it all comes back to your quarterback. Do you have one there, or do you have a way to get one? And that's one of the things that makes your job potentially a desirable place. If Pittsburgh comes calling, what you said before about the Rooneys, being patient. Same with Baltimore. And plus you have Lamar Jackson if you believe he's a winner at quarterback. So it would not surprise. I hope it doesn't happen, but it would not surprise me if Brandon Staley. I know he's going to get interviews. It would not surprise me if he gets an offer somewhere in this cycle.
Yeah. What about Brian Flores? You mentioned him in passing with the Steelers. Now I know he's got the lawsuit with the NFL, but Brian Flores is still a hell of a defensive coach. I would think that Brian Flores would work really well in New York with the Giants because his job would be to make Andre Carter work. The Giants historically have been a strong defensive-minded team going back to the Parcells era. Even the Conklin era. They still were a strong defensive team with Michael Strahan. Getting a defensive coach after they've just experienced an offensive coach, but having Jackson Dart and then building around Dart to be a running team with a mobile quarterback who throws to Malik Neighbors, but still you're primarily a defensive team, ball control. You can make big plays when you need to, but your job is to squeeze the life out of your opponents like a boa constrictor. To me, Brian Flores really works for me in New York. I mean, do you see that, or do you see Brian Flores even getting looks or opportunities again?
I sure hope he gets looks. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. He's a hell of a coach. Certainly a hell of a defensive coach. He got a raw deal in Miami. I mean, he willed that team, that talent deficient team, to double digit wins twice, I believe. And he had him playing hard. I agree with you. I think the lawsuit is going to scare away some people. Maybe the league execs are making a subtle push, or maybe not so subtle push, to blackball him. But I think you're a fool if you don't even consider Brian Flores. And I agree. I think he would be a great fit in New York. Obviously, he's not going to be going back to Miami. Tennessee might want to take a look at him. Brian Flores is going to get some interviews. I hope it's just more than token interviews, because we're trying to A, prove that Brian Flores isn't blackballed, and B, we're trying to fulfill our Rooney Rule obligations. And I think that's what happened to Brian last year, maybe even the last 2 years. I have a feeling Brian Flores gets a job this year, because everybody's going to want to hire Harbaugh, Tomlin, or Stefanski. Well, like you pointed out, there's 9 openings. There's only three of those guys, and Tomlin is most likely of those three to kind of cherry pick his jobs. Now, I hope Brian Flores isn't desperate enough to pick a Raiders or someplace like that. No, because I mean, again, just like we mentioned with Brandon Staley, you're sort of rebuilding your resume in New Orleans. Brian Flores is very much doing that, where he's at now. So again, he's going to get talked to. I just hope it's more than just to fulfill a couple on paper obligations, so you don't get your ass sued or you look good.
Last two names to bring up. One of them is near and dear to your heart. Clint Kubiak is another name that keeps coming up that people are talking about hiring. Again, he's got that magical name. And I just drew a blank on the other name. I had two in my head, and I wanted to bring up Clint Kubiak. I can't believe I just forgot this.
You mentioned, and I can't. Shame on me for not talking about Kubiak. You mentioned Robert Saleh. I think he gets. I think he gets some love too.
Oh, here's the other name. Mike McCarthy. Is he pretty much out of the picture now? Because it's been a year. I really don't see any kind of groundswell as like you would have with a Tomlin or Peyton, where people looking at Mike McCarthy going, you know what? These guys aren't going to come to me. Does Mike McCarthy end up with the Raiders because there's no other job openings, and people are just like, no one wants to come to the Raiders. Do I just take this job just to get this organization straight, and be a placeholder until Tomlin's available again? That was the other name I was thinking of. But Robert Saleh is another name that's coming up a lot. Defensive-minded coach. I can't see him going to the Giants after the Jets experience, but I could see him going to the Ravens, for example, because
that'd be a good hire for the Ravens.
He fits what the Ravens want to be able to do. They're a defensive team traditionally, even when they had Brian Billick there. What were they known for? Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and that group. The offensive guys, you didn't even know that. In fact, Brian Billick that's a funny soundbite in NFL films. Ray Lewis comes out with his stomp and he says, I'm supposed to follow that. That's the reality of it. The Baltimore is a blue collar ethnic city. And I mean that in a good way, not a negative way, but they are a blue collar, black, Italian, an eastern seaboard port city with a very diverse population with a lot of ethnicities in that region, so that seems like Robert Saleh would seem like that kind of coach, because look what he did with a beat up to hell 49ers defense. You give him an organization as strong as the Ravens that draft well, and he can build a super defense there, and it fits that culture and it fits that division, blue collar, physical defense. I mean, I kind of see Robert Saleh being a good option for that team.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a great hire. Clint Kubiak feels like a nice fit for Tennessee and Cam Ward. I can see that. Going back to McCarthy, if McCarthy is a head coach anywhere, it's going to be the Raiders, because they can't get anybody else. And McCarthy's a shiny name. He has a Super Bowl ring. He has X number of division titles with the Cowboys. I more or less see McCarthy falling in line with what has happened with Brandon Staley. The Saints hired a young guy and Kellen Moore a first-time head coach. Kellen Moore's an offensive guy. I need a head coach for my defense.
Yeah.
I have a good relationship with Brandon Staley. He's a perfect fit, and it turned out he was. You get someone, and I have no idea if a Clint Kubiak or not a Clint. I have no idea if a Chris Shula has a good relationship with Mike McCarthy. I'm just using this as an example. Chris Shula gets hired. He's a young defensive guy. He needs a head coach for the offense. Mike McCarthy's always been an offensive guy. That's an opportunity for Mike to kind of rebuild his resume the way Staley is doing, the way Flores is doing. If Mike McCarthy gets back into coaching and isn't the head coach of the Raiders, that's the way I see it happening.
I feel the same as you. I just think the Raiders' job is so unappealing outside of having the number 1 overall pick. Just because that team is a mess. That organization is a mess. The owners are, adult. You've got Tom Brady in there, but Tom Brady is kind of like Al Hurt with the Saints under John Meekum. He was a celebrity owner who had a percentage of the team. You got a hell of a task to take on to try and fix the Raiders. And there's too much. I don't know how to describe it. Al Davis's ghost hangs over that franchise. And you've got to be a certain kind of team because of the way the fans are. Trying to, be a team that doesn't exist anymore. You're competing against a ghost, and Mark Davis keeps that ghost alive. And it's just, how do you win with this? Because you can't strip it to the studs and redo it all in a new image. Just because that's not the Raiders fans, that's not the way the Raiders are perceived, and it would take a unique personality to get that job. Hemisphere, you're right. I don't want to be a Raiders fan. Now they want to bring Derek Carr back because of the quarterbacks they've had to replace Carr. And
let them.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people do the same thing with A.J. Brown. A lot of people want to get Max Crosby from the Raiders. Again, I don't think you want to spend that much money in the draft capital to get a guy like that. He is not. You get a Max Crosby if you made the NFC Championship game that year. And the only difference between you making it to the Super Bowl or not is a pass rush. If this was a 2017 Saints and you felt like if I just had another edge rusher who could come in and take out that quarterback so he doesn't even have an opportunity to throw that pass for the Minneapolis Miracle, which is why the Saints went after Davenport. I laugh about this, Calvin, because if you get the right coach there, and they take Mendoza, and I think about these Giants fans talking about the Saints and their all-pro receiving core that Shuck had to throw to compared to Dart. If Mendoza has a lot of success because he's throwing to a Brock Bowers and he gets to hand off to an Ashton Genty and they draft a good receiver, say they draft, they get a Bell, for example, from Louisville, and he recovers very well. So now they got a number 1 receiver, number 1 tight end, number 1 running back, and somehow they straighten out an offensive line out. They'd be talking about, oh yeah, look, that was an easy job to take. Look what they, he just walked right into that situation. There's so many pieces that have to go in, but yeah, Brock Bowers would be a nice player. Yeah, I would take them, but they're not getting rid of him. I don't know who the Raiders would go for. I really don't. That's where coaches and players' careers go to die.
Yep.
The Browns are a close second.
Yeah.
because you still have that incompetent GM. You don't have a quarterback. You're not in position to go get a quarterback. How do you pick up the pieces of that franchise? And, is that a team that's just, are you going to build that team kind of like we were talking about the Ravens with Robert Saleh, get a defensive minded coach, build that team to be a defensive team, get a quarterback who can execute an offense, but not is the savior of the offense. You have a decent running back in Junkins, but he got hurt. It's just, there's a lot of question marks on that team, that franchise, and a lot of it comes from ownership on down. Bob, you have a Bayou Blitz coming up this week?
Yeah. Now I told you last week that we would, and Brendan and I decided to suddenly just take the rest of the week off.
Hey.
We will be back. Our plan is to be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central. Where we'll, since we did take last week off, we were planning on just kind of recapping the Saints season, or at least starting our recap of the Saints season. But with all the coaching news and obviously the playoffs going on, that we might be stuck in that loop again. But for sure, we will have content.
Oh yeah. And for those of y'all who are like, hey, this is supposed to be a Saints podcast, y'all talk about everything but the Saints. There's not that much Saints news right now. Yes, Chris Olave got named second team All-Pro. Only the third receiver in Saints history to be named to an All-Pro team.
Michael Thomas. Horn the other one?
No.
Horn? No,
it's Michael Thomas and Danny Abramowitz.
Oh.
Because in 1969, Danny Abramowitz won the receiving title.
I knew that.
So most catches, most yards. He went to the Pro Bowl that year. But Michael Thomas is the only other one on there who made the All-Pro list. Horn made Pro Bowls. Colston never made a Pro Bowl.
Right.
So it's a pretty impressive accomplishment, and unfortunately that's going to get translated into his contract. So that's going to kind of limit you and what you can do in free agency as far as receivers. And that's why, again, I wasn't that anxious to take on AJ Brown, because I think you're going to spend your money on Chris Olave. But I promise you, we're going to talk about the divisional round next week. Then the NFC Championship game. Then we have 2 weeks. The Pro Bowl happens between the Super Bowl and the the NFL Championship games. But I'm not watching that shit. So we can go over the Saints, believe me, during that week between the Super Bowl and then it's free agency time. The good news is, I think the Senior Bowl is in 2 weeks, which, again, that's how I started the show. 23 teams have coaches. 9 teams do not. They're not going to be at the Senior Bowl. Their scouts are going to be there, and they're not going to even know who they're drafting for. What kind of team am I building? So, it's just it's insane, the schedule that's still up there, and these coaches aren't going to get named anytime soon. And they definitely won't be hiring anybody between the Super Bowl and the NFL Championship games, because that's kind of the unwritten rule. You don't take any news away from the 2 Super Bowl teams Super Bowl week. So who knows when these coaches are going to start getting hired. It may be this giant onrush of names that get named that week, that week of before the Super Bowl. So who knows? But in the meantime, we'll talk about the Saints in those dead times when there's not a lot of league news, because we've got free agency to worry about. The Saints will have money to spend. I think Loomis has kind of made that statement when he said at the end of the year press conference, our goal is not to be an 8-9 division winner. Our goal is to get to the playoffs and advance. So that tells me they are going to they're actually going to spend some money this year, not just get guys that are at the end of their careers. So,
yep.
In the meantime, Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Probably getting more Saints news out of that. Yeah, I don't know, Calvin. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to pay him or not. I think they got a number in mind, so it's up to Alante to take that.
Yeah. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I promise, Calvin.
Absolutely, and we'll talk about it as we get closer to free agency.
Alan, do you want to join us tomorrow? Brendan wanted me to ask you, and I forgot.
Yeah, I should be able to join you guys tomorrow night.
Cool.
I don't think I've got anything happening yet. It's my parents' wedding anniversary. I don't know what my dad's going to do. My mom passed away a couple of years ago. I know he said he's going to the cemetery, so I don't know if he's going to even talk about it. I can't even show videos of my mom anymore. So, you know, he gets really depressed around this time because the 14th is his wedding anniversary. It'd be 59 years they would have been married, and his birthday is on the 25th, so 2 weeks. I'm looking at my calendar right now. So, but I'll let you know for sure. I don't mind jumping in on that because, of course, there's some things, you know, going on that I'd love to talk about. But in the meantime, Bob, thanks as always for joining us. Thank you guys for being with us, and we'll see you next week on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.